I woke up in the middle of the night, like someone had just yanked me out of a deep, dark place with nothing to hold on to. My head was so heavy that lifting it a few inches made my neck throb. My hand shook. My breathing broke apart, like my body had been running for miles while my mind stayed behind. A soft yellow light from the hallway spilled into the room, cutting across Ben's silhouette as he stood by the bed. He watched me in silence, his face showing nothing but a cold kind of calm, like he'd been there for a long time, waiting for me to wake up at this exact moment. He handed me a pill. "It helps you sleep, babe." His voice was gentle, almost soft, but for some reason it sent a chill straight through me. I wanted to ask how long I'd been out, or whether I'd fainted or burned out completely, but my throat was too dry. I didn't have the strength to argue. I just swallowed the pill and felt Ben's hand settle on my shoulder, a light touch with no warmth at all. I watched his shadow as he walked out, the hallway light stretching into a long line that split the room in two. One half was me tired, hollow. The other half was him, just out of reach, but controlling the air around me. That image stayed in my head longer than the bitter taste of the pill. In the days that followed, I started noticing the moments I'd lost, like pieces of film cut out of a reel. I remembered making breakfast, then suddenly I was sitting in the living room with the TV on, but no idea when I turned it on. I opened my laptop and saw emails already marked as read, though I didn't remember opening them. There were replies to clients written in a tone that didn't sound like me. One night my best friend texted, "Are you okay? You sounded weird last night." I stared at the screen. I called her? What did I say? Why couldn't I remember? Worry crept into me like cold air spreading across the floor. I tried to calm myself. Maybe I was just stressed. Maybe I wasn't sleeping enough. But even as I told myself that, part of me knew something didn't line up. Ben, on the other hand, seemed more at ease than usual. Sometimes I'd catch him lingering in front of the mirror, adjusting his shirt, fixing his hair before work. I also noticed a strange perfume on his dress shirt, a scent that wasn't mine, that didn't belong to me. His schedule suddenly became unpredictable. Last-minute meetings, team dinners, weekend overshifts. When I asked why things had changed so much, he just answered quickly, avoiding my eyes. New project. Tight deadline. A hollow, rushed reply, missing the concern he used to have. All of it made me feel even more like I was being pushed out of his life. Then one evening, when I opened social media, I saw a comment from a woman I didn't know on a photo Ben had just posted. The words were vague, half joking, half familiar, like there was something between them only the two of them understood. I tapped into her profile. Her name was Rachel, the kind of person who always looked like she was posing for a perfect picture hair, falling just right, a glass of wine in hand, a kitchen glowing with warm lights. I planned to ask Ben about her, a simple, casual question, giving him a chance to explain. But the moment I walked toward him, his phone lit up. Ben saw me, and his first instinct wasn't to smile. It was to delete the message. Fast, a move too practiced, too deliberate, too much like something a guilty person would do. That moment froze the air in the room. I felt a distance form between us, not because of silence, but because something bigger was being hidden. That night, I opened a secret note on my phone. I started writing everything down, the strange scent on his shirt, the blackout moments, objects being moved, Ben's reactions, as if I didn't record it, the truth would get swallowed up by those strange nights of sleep. I typed the last line, my hands a little unsteady, but my mind clearer than ever. If those pills are really just to help me sleep, then why do I wake up feeling less like myself every time? Since I started keeping notes on the strange things happening, nothing got better. If anything, the blackouts came faster, to the point where I almost feared the afternoons, the time of day when the pills usually made everything blur out. One day, I remembered standing in the kitchen cutting fruit, and the next thing I knew, I was in the bedroom with the curtains pulled shut and my legs numb like I'd just run a marathon. Then I found a large bruise on my right arm, a dark, spreading mark like someone had gripped me hard. I touched it lightly and the pain made me shudder. But my memory was blank. No fall, no bump, not a single image to explain it. When I asked Ben about it, he just looked at me with this tired, almost forced sense of responsibility. You hurt yourself in your sleep. You've been flailing your arms a lot lately. He said it too quickly, like he'd rehearsed it. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at the bruise for a long time. One stubborn thought pushed its way in. If I'd really been flailing my arms, why was there only one bruise so clear, so deep, and perfectly rounded? For the first time, I felt myself losing control in a way that didn't belong to me anymore. From the smallest things around the house, I started noticing something even more unfamiliar than my memory lapses. Food in the fridge kept shifting around. I'd leave a box of berries on the top shelf, and the next day it was in the lower shelf next to a sauce I barely used. Clothes I'd organized by color were suddenly out of place. A blue shirt tucked between white ones. A sweater I knew I'd folded ending up on a hanger. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and saw a necklace sitting on the counter. A thin silver chain, a small teardrop pendant. I'd never seen it before. It wasn't mine. And it wasn't the kind of thing Ben would buy for me. It was too delicate, too intentional. I brought it to the living room and held it out to Ben. What is this? Who left this in our house? He just shrugged. You forgot. You took it out the other day. I looked straight at him. I've never seen it before. Ben let out a sigh like I was exhausting him over something unimportant. You're stressing yourself out again. Your memory hasn't been great lately. His you forget things had become the automatic answer to everything strange. Too convenient, too perfectly aligned with what I feared, and too fitting for someone who wanted me to doubt myself. I started digging into my past for something solid to hold on to. There was a time when I went through a heavy stretch of stress losing a family member, work falling apart, long nights without sleep. Back then, Ben was the one who pulled me out of that dark period. He took care of me, reassured me, told me I was stronger than I thought. Those were the reasons I loved him. I trusted him more than I trusted anyone. Maybe that's why I kept trying to see the best in him, kept believing he was only worried about me. But the more I trusted, the easier it became for me to be manipulated. The trust that once helped me stand up was now the very thing keeping me from facing the truth. Then one night, Ben came home very late. The sound of the door opening was soft but rushed, like someone trying not to be heard. When he walked into the room, his shirt was uneven, his collar wrinkled, his hair windswept and messy. What chilled me was that he wasn't wearing his wedding ring. That ring had always been on his hand, like a habit he never broke. I sat up, ready to ask where he'd been, but he walked straight into the bathroom to wash his face without looking at me. When he came out, he avoided my eyes in a way that was impossible to miss. I stayed still, closed my eyes, pretended to sleep. A few minutes later, I heard him speaking quietly into his phone, his voice sharp but held back. Not tonight. She's not stable. I knew he was talking about me. I felt it in every word. It wasn't worry. It wasn't protection. It was annoyance. Like I was a problem he needed to deal with soon. I felt my chest tighten, a truth slowly taking shape. Ben really was cheating. And whoever he was talking to knew a lot about me and about the state I was slipping into. Anger mixed with fear rose up in me. I wanted to get out of bed, confront him, ask him outright what he was doing behind my back. But just as I was about to speak, Ben turned toward me with a pill in his hand. You need to take this. You're stressed. He held it up close to my lips. This time there was something in his eyes that scared me, not concern for me, concern that I might refuse. Why do I have to take it right now? I asked, weak but clear. Just take it. An order. No softness like before. He handed me a glass of water, and I knew I couldn't refuse without turning this into a confrontation I wasn't ready for. I swallowed the pill. A cold wave rushed from my chest to my head faster than ever. My body sank into a frightening numbness. Lying in bed, my vision blurring. I could only think one thing. If I can't hold on to my memories, I'll lose myself. When I woke up, I knew I couldn't keep trusting whatever Ben was giving me. I couldn't let myself drift one more second in this controlled fog. That night, I made the clearest decision I'd ever made. I would pretend to swallow the pill. That evening, holding the pill in my hand, I knew I couldn't afford a single mistake. One wrong move and Ben would notice. I slipped the pill under my tongue, the metallic cold spreading so fast it made my whole body prickle. I kept my breathing slow, my face steady, even though my heart was beating so hard it felt like the room could hear it. Ben stood by the bed, watching me drink the water he handed me. He checked my pulse like it was a routine. But this time, I could feel his eyes were different, no longer the eyes of a caring husband, but calculating, measuring how long it would take before I slipped into the fake sleep he thought was real. I lay down, closed my eyes, kept my body still. Ben leaned in for a second, his hand brushing across my forehead. It should have been comforting. Instead, it was so cold I had to fight the urge to flinch. After a few minutes, he stood up and walked out of the room, looking oddly relieved. I heard the door click shut. Immediately, I pushed myself upright as quietly as I could. The fake pill under my tongue made my tongue tingle, but my mind was clearer than ever. From the hallway, Ben's voice drifted back soft, but not soft enough to miss. She won't notice anything. As long as she sleeps, we're good. That sentence sent a cold shock down my back. I stepped closer to the door, my heart hanging in midair. He was talking about me, and the way he said, "We're good," sounded like reassurance for someone else, not for himself. I cracked the bedroom door open and followed the sound down to the living room. There, the blue glow from his laptop screen lit up Ben's face. He was on a video call, and the person on the screen was Rachel. In the camera frame, Rachel sat somewhere upscale, warm lighting, a glass of red wine beside her. The moment I heard her voice, it felt like something in my chest was shoved out of place. "She's fragile. We just need her to look unstable for a while." Her tone was gentle in a way that was terrifying, like she was giving advice on pruning a garden, not talking about someone's mental state. Ben sighed and dropped his head into his hand. "This is harder than I thought." Rachel let out a soft laugh, a pretty laugh, but empty. "You said you're done with her, didn't you? If she looks unstable, you'll get the perfect exit, and I'll finally get the life I deserve." I felt my whole body drop to the floor, even though I was still standing. Rachel wasn't just the affair. She was steering everything. She wanted me to look like a woman losing control, losing awareness, easy to discard. Not so Ben could hide the cheating, but so she could replace me cleanly. I watched Ben look down, his eyes showing a weakness I'd never noticed before. Rachel was using jealousy and ambition to push him further than I ever thought he'd go, and he wasn't fighting it. He was letting her decide the direction of my life. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound. My heart felt like a heavy stone lodged in my chest. There was no doubt anymore. I wasn't just being betrayed. I was being targeted. I went back upstairs, trying to steady myself. I needed proof. I needed something undeniable before I confronted any of this. I opened my laptop to check the home cameras, the ones I thought we only used to watch our pets when we weren't home. But the living room camera had been tilted away. The hallway camera, too. Only the old camera in the storage room hadn't been touched. When I rewound the footage from a few weeks earlier, the image was a little grainy, but in the middle of the frame was the clear outline of a woman standing right outside our bedroom door. She didn't walk in, she just stood there watching. Her long brown hair caught the light from the hallway. I didn't need a close-up to recognize her. It was Rachel. I bit down on my lip to keep from gasping. It felt like an invisible hand tightened around my stomach. My memory wasn't the problem. I wasn't the one moving things around. I wasn't losing control. Someone was coming into my house. Someone wanted me to think I was losing my mind. I looked around the room, and every object suddenly carried a different meaning. The shirt, out of place. The strange necklace. The food containers that kept shifting. Everything snapped together so cleanly, I couldn't believe I hadn't seen it sooner. In that moment, one thought hit me, sharp and solid like metal. I wasn't forgetting. I was being put to sleep so I wouldn't see my life being replaced piece by piece. I sat on the edge of the bed, gripping the pillow just to steady myself. The shaking inside me shifted into something else, a cold kind of clarity. Ben wasn't where I found safety anymore. He was someone I had to watch. And Rachel, the woman who had been slipping through the shadows of my home, clearly wanted more than an affair. She wanted my life. Together, they saw me as something to remove, using a kind of careful cruelty. I couldn't wait any longer. I couldn't let another night pass while I pretended not to know. I stood up, opened my secret notes, and wrote the final line of the night. From now on, stay sharp, gather proof, flip the game. I closed my phone, and in the dark, I knew I had crossed into a different part of my life, one where I was no longer the one being led. I knew I couldn't trust Ben. I knew I had to act, and I started planning. Ever since I knew Rachel had actually set foot in my house, I stopped letting myself react on emotion. I switched into something colder, more deliberate. I needed proof, not to convince Ben, because I already knew he wasn't someone I could trust anymore, but to protect myself. I bought a small camera, the kind people use to watch their pets, but one that could record in the dark. I hid it in the bedroom, wedged between two books on a shelf. From that angle, it could see the bed, the doorway, and most of the corner where Rachel had appeared in the earlier footage. The first night, I began pretending to black out. I let my body drop onto the mattress like someone worn out, kept my breathing slow and even. I let my eyelids close in that half-natural, half-calculated way, leaving just a thin slit to track movement. The room sank into darkness, with only the hallway clock ticking. Around midnight, the door clicked open so carefully it was obvious it wasn't someone entering with innocent intentions. A figure stepped in. Rachel. She stood right beside my bed, her breath carrying the same perfume I'd smelled on Ben's shirt. Her hair fell forward, covering part of her face. I kept every muscle still, but I could feel each tiny movement she made, like the air in the room shifted to accommodate her presence. Rachel leaned down. Her whisper brushed against my ear, each word sharp and cold like a needle against my skin. You don't deserve him. I'd be a better wife than you ever were. I wanted to open my eyes, to get up, to shove her hand off my shoulder. But I had to stay still. I needed the footage. I needed the truth framed clearly, undeniable. When Rachel left the room, I heard another set of footsteps in the hallway. Ben. He walked in a few seconds later, like her visit was just another part of a plan they'd arranged ahead of time. She's sleeping deeper tonight, Rachel said quietly near the doorway. Ben answered, his voice unsteady. I don't know if we should keep doing this. What if she wakes up? Then you give her more, Rachel said flatly, without hesitation. If she starts talking, everything falls apart. Her words cut a cold line straight through my chest. Rachel didn't just want me out of control. She wanted me unable to speak about anything I saw, remembered, or questioned. Ben stayed quiet for a few seconds, then let out a breath. I'm scared. Rachel let out a dry laugh. You weren't scared when you came to my place last week. My heart tightened. Not because of the affair, but because the truth became clearer. Ben wasn't the one driving this. He was someone easily swayed, easily led by someone who knew exactly where his weak spots were. Every bit of his weakness had turned into a blade pointed directly at me. When they left, I waited a few more minutes before I shot up and rushed to the camera. I checked the footage. Everything had been recorded. Rachel's voice was clear, her face visible enough that anyone watching would understand exactly what was happening. I checked more footage from previous days, determined to piece together every fragment of the truth. And the more I watched, the more I saw how often Rachel had been there. She came into my house while I slept. She rearranged things. She opened my laptop, scrolling through emails like she was searching for something. Then I saw footage of her placing the strange necklace on the counter, footage of her moving the pill bottles around the house, footage of her hitting send on an email that made me look unstable at work. Not accidents, not mix-ups, not stress, like Ben kept saying. It was a setup. Every small action was meant to build a new version of me, a version who wasn't reliable, who seemed erratic, questionable, replaceable. A chill ran down my spine as the full logic of her plan clicked into place. If she could make everyone see me as someone with psychological issues, she could slip into my life without anyone questioning it. I tightened my grip on my phone, the cold spreading through my palm. I knew I had to end this. The next night, I staged an even deeper fake sleep than before. I arranged the blanket carefully, let my hand hang off the edge of the bed, kept my breathing slow and light. The room was so quiet, I could hear the wind slipping through the crack under the door. Not long after, the door opened again. Rachel walked in like this was her house. She headed straight for the bed, ready to lean over me like before. But this time, I was ready. I switched on the light. A sharp burst of brightness cut through the dark. Rachel froze, caught like someone standing center stage when the curtain drops too early. And Ben was standing right behind her. For a second, it felt like a cinematic frame locked in place. Rachel snapping her head back, eyes wide with shock. Ben leaning forward, face drained, completely unprepared to be exposed. And me, still on the bed, but not weak, not confused, wide awake. I hope you two enjoy performing, I said, my voice low but steady, because I have video, audio, and screenshots. Rachel stepped back. You're crazy. Unfortunately for you, I said, my cameras disagree. I opened my phone and played the clip of Rachel standing beside my bed, whispering that cruel line about how she'd make a better wife than me. Her voice filled the room like a slap across her own face. Rachel shifted instantly. Her softness vanished. Ben doesn't love you. He picked me. I looked at Ben. His expression collapsed. There was nowhere left for him to hide. No line he could use to cover this up. Tell her, Rachel snapped. Tell her we're together. Ben's breath shook. I didn't want this to go this far. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel hurt by the betrayal anymore. I just felt empty. He didn't just betray me. He was so weak he let someone else orchestrate my destruction from inside my own home. I stood up from the bed, the white light falling across my shoulders, making the room feel wider and colder. I didn't curse. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said one thing. You two deserve each other. I grabbed my bag, walked out of the room, went down the stairs. Nothing tried to stop me. No apology was strong enough to make me turn around. I opened the front door and stepped into the cool night air. And in that silence, I didn't feel myself falling apart. I felt awake for the first time in months. I left that house. No tears, no shouting, just a quiet, steady awareness. I walked away on a cold, still night where the air felt flat as untouched water. When the door closed behind me, I didn't know exactly what waited ahead, but I knew one thing for sure. I would never go back to being someone who could be led again. That silence wasn't loss. It was the sound of someone finally seeing their own path. Not long after, everything came to light. Rachel breaking into my home, the deliberate attempts to damage my mental state, and the video of her standing at my bedside were enough for the court to issue a restraining order. When I got the notice, it felt like confirmation that everything I'd lived through wasn't imagined. Rachel couldn't come near me anymore, couldn't touch my life in any way. Ben faced a different reality. Giving me pills without any legitimate medical direction was quickly classified as harmful behavior. I remember the moment the lawyer used the word intentional. It felt like one last cut to the softest part of me. He had to answer for what he'd done, and I was no longer tied to any of it. Both Ben and Rachel lost each other for the same reason: deception. They built something on secrecy, manipulation, and pushing responsibility onto someone else. Nothing built on that can hold. When the truth surfaced, they fell apart just as fast as they had aligned themselves to destroy me. And in a strange way, that helped me see the value of honesty more clearly, the thing I once believed I was getting. In the early days of living alone, the quiet scared me a little. During those first nights in my new place, I didn't turn on the hallway light because that warm yellow glow reminded me too much of all the nights I woke up in a fog. I had to relearn how to listen to myself, my breathing, my heartbeat, the way my mind reacted to being alone. I realized I'd neglected myself for so long that getting to know me again felt like meeting an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. I started therapy. On the first day, I could barely talk. I just sat there with my hands clenched, trying to piece together a story from memories that no longer connected smoothly. But my therapist didn't ask for the whole story right away. She asked, "How do you feel today?" That simple question opened a door I'd kept locked for too long. Day by day, I began unraveling what hurt me most, not just the betrayal, but losing my own voice, realizing how often I stepped back, made space for others, until I forgot how important I was in my own life. I started doing the things I'd put off because of the marriage. I went back to writing, something I set aside because Ben said it was impractical. I took morning walks, drank lemon water, decorated my apartment exactly the way I liked. Nothing was moved when I left the house. No more missing hours. No more doors opening in the middle of the night. One afternoon, while cleaning out a corner of a closet, I found the notebook I'd kept during the last months of the marriage. Inside it was a line I'd written during one of my most frightened moments. "If I can't hold on to my memories, I'll lose myself." Looking back, I understand how true that was. And now, with no one else controlling my story, I wrote a new line on the last page. Betrayal didn't break me. It just cleared the fog I used to cover up my own intuition. The day I got the final email saying Ben had been ordered into mandatory psychological treatment, I didn't feel angry anymore. No hatred, no wish for him to hurt the way I once did. I just felt light, because I'd finally stepped out of the cycle where I was diminished, doubted, and pushed into a smaller version of myself. Freedom didn't come from them paying a price. It came from me choosing to leave. I started to understand that a person's worth isn't defined by who chooses them or who betrays them, but by how they rise after everything falls apart. I didn't try to rebuild the old version of me. I let myself become a new one, clearer, stronger, more in tune with my instincts. One morning, when I opened the window for fresh air, the early light fell across the things I'd chosen for my new place. No shadow behind me, no breath beside me, Just me and a peace I once thought I'd never find again. I smiled to myself, soft, real, no strain, no trembling, and I said the final line, the one that belongs entirely to me, uncut and untouched. I once slept deeply because I trusted the wrong person, but now, when I open my eyes, I see myself more clearly than ever. Thank you for listening to my story. See you next time.